Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Here we are once again with the Near Memo. It's David, Mike, and Greg talking about search, social, and commerce through a local lens. And we've got an action-packed episode, as always, for you. We're going to start off today with Mike, who's going to talk about some of the recent developments around review fraud, the one-star review extortion scam, and Amazon's effort to take down some of the Facebook groups that are generating a lot of the fake reviews. So Mike, take it away.
So Amazon, in a fancy press release, announced that they were requesting...
Did you say fancy press release?
In a detailed press release, noted that they were asking Facebook to take down 10,000 groups where fake reviews were sold, and they were acting in the best interest of consumers. Google also noted that they just recently learned about the extortion efforts in restaurants and that they were going to do something about it. So in Amazon's case, of the 10,000, Facebook only took down 5,000 of these groups. Now, either Amazon sort of threw in an extra 5,000 just for the round number of asking for group takedowns of groups, or Facebook isn't there doing the job, which is equally possible. But it was definitely performance theater. The piece that got me was the quote here: permanently ridding fake reviews across retail, travel, and other sectors will require greater public-private partnership, including collaboration between the affected companies, social media sites, and law enforcement, all focused on a goal of greater consumer protection. Amazon remains eager to continue to partner with all the relevant stakeholders to achieve that mutual goal. This is from a company that, like Google, created an environment where it was obvious many, many years ago that fake reviews were a problem. They put virtually zero effort into it. Google, equally culpable, finally acknowledged this scam that was been in the press for the last 3 weeks. Every major city, San Francisco, Houston, Chicago, Miami, were being hit, New York, all these places. Finally, it made it to the New York Times and the Guardian, and they finally posted a post by a low-level community manager that they recently became aware of a scam targeting businesses, which is total BS. They've known of this scam forever. In fact, I wrote about this scam in 2011. It's been ongoing since then. And they said, all you got to do is flag the reviews on their review flagging software. In other words, they're not doing anything special here. They're just letting their Indian subcontractors take the reviews down, as Search Engine Land said sometimes. So both of these are just performance theater in light of the FTC finally saying that they're going to hold these folks accountable. In fact, Facebook did similar performance theater a couple of weeks ago, talking to people who've been trying to get Facebook reviews taken down that are clearly similar ilk. Nobody's home. So between Facebook, Amazon, and Google, they've created this morass. And as is typical, Amazon says, well, it's everybody's problem, So anyway, sorry, that wasn't a talk. That was a rant. I look forward to your response.
One question that arises in my mind is what kind of action could the FTC take against the platforms, given the liability shield that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act provides them? I don't think there is any action, really. Fake reviews are a form of consumer deception. The FTC earlier put everybody on notice that they had new endorsement guidelines, including reviews, and that if different tools and platforms didn't comply, then they would be potentially subject to whatever fines, remedies are available now to the FTC. But I think there's a kind of conflict between that and Section 230. But that's a sort of a legal question that may never get answered. But go ahead.
Let me ask you this: do you think that sort of an ongoing public shaming by the FTC, with the depth and detail that a government organization can provide in terms of the number of instances and the prevalence of these instances, would be enough, that just the brand hit to these three platforms might be enough, and maybe even more significant than some sort of financial penalty.
Well, definitely more significant.
Other directive.
Definitely the shaming and the public repudiation is more significant to these brands than the financial penalties in the US. In Europe, it's a little bit of a different story now. But I think that my own view is that these fake reviews and the growing awareness of fake reviews is contributing to a certain level of declining trust that may be driving some people to other places. Certainly, I've stopped paying any attention to Amazon reviews at all. I buy stuff on Amazon. I don't read the reviews at all. And it's been a great relief, actually. But I think some of what's going on with the Gen Z and TikTok and Instagram taking some of the share from Google in local search, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, is partly fueled by a lack of trust in the content that people are seeing. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the main driver, but I think that that's playing at the margins. So I think these platforms do need to really be concerned about public perceptions, and I think the shaming that you described would get them to take some action. But I'm not sure that it would be different than what Mike is railing against. This kind of performance review enforcement theater where
it's a well-trodden playbook at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they say they file a symbolic lawsuit and they point to this or that mitigation that they're doing, but they don't do it consistently, and they don't have a structured program in place to
Well, and there's nothing proactive about it. Yeah.
Although
it's all reactive based.
They all say that our algorithms are removing millions of fake reviews before consumers ever see them. Amazon said that in the release that you're talking about.
And Google consistently says this. The other thing about the Google response, which I find fascinating, is that it's reflective of not just their review playbook, but their problem playbook. When Google measures problems in the marketplace like they measure everything. They track it. And when there's a certain amount of noise in the marketplace, if it was just Houston, they might not have responded, but then Houston, Chicago, Miami, San Francisco, and finally the New York Times, they ultimately responded and said, oh, we're doing something, which Search Engine Land and Search Engine Roundtable dutifully reported out as them doing something. All they're really doing is acknowledging that there is a problem, but it's a problem we've known about for 10 years, and hoping people will stop talking about it. And so this is their playbook. And then they just go on doing what they've been doing, which is not allocating resources to creating a effective mechanism to monitor and moderate reviews, because it's too expensive, requires too much human intervention.
It's not too expensive. I mean, in fairness,
it's not a fun problem for a product team to work on. That's ultimately, I think,
right.
What it is.
Exactly. I put that in quotes.
Well, in fairness to Barry Schwartz and to Search Engine Land, I said something sort of similar. I gave Google some credit for addressing the problem, but now that you've enlightened me, I retract everything positive I said about Google.
We'll be updating that story with
yes, with just a bunch of expletives I'm going to put in there.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.